morning. Let me try that again. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Me? Well, I'm going to apologise in advance because today's show contains not one rant, but two. Those rants are born out of, well, not anger so much as frustration. And since the entire industry seems to greet each costly and potentially game-changing pronouncement with a whimper instead of a roar, frankly, who else is going to say what needs to be said? So let me start with my first rant before we actually get into the show. Following our Saturday social show, in which we spoke for more than an hour about the impending end to grandfather rights under the CSCM scheme, I posted a video that I prepared for the show over on LinkedIn. Incidentally, LinkedIn seems to be on a go slow today for some reason, but that's an aside. Now, it would be overstating things to say that the video went viral, because it didn't, but it has been viewed almost 5,000 times at the last time I looked. And I was answering responses to it until very late last night. Anyway, you know how I love a good football analogy. Well, how about this? There's a team playing in the top flight of French football called Reims. The team is unbeaten since September, and this past weekend they held the reigning champions and current league leaders Paris Saint-Germain to a draw at PSG's home stadium in Paris. So, unbeaten in 12 games, taking a point off a team that includes Lionel Messi, Neymar, and Kylian Mbappe. Pretty good, right? Well, sort of. Because every time that Reims play, they are fined £22,000 because their 30-year-old English manager has not been granted a mandatory UEFA Pro licence that he needs to manage a team in the French league. So they're unbeaten in 12 games, but he doesn't have a piece of paper to prove that he can do the very thing that he is already doing so brilliantly. Does that sound familiar to anyone? All of which reminded me of something else football related. When Wayne Rooney was first picked to play for England, there were suggestions in the media that he was too young. The England manager met that criticism by saying if he's good enough, he's old enough. Now, I've subsequently heard that same phrase trotted out to explain first Theo Walcott and more recently Jude Bellingham's selection to represent his country. So going back to the CSCS grandfather rights discussion, it's not a matter of if you're good enough, you're old enough. It's surely a case of if you're good enough and you've been good enough for the past 20 or 30 years, then surely you're good enough. And just one final point, at least for now, those men and women that are going to have to prove themselves and get themselves an MVQ over the loss of grandfather rights, they're currently working, I would presume. They might be employed, they might be self-employed, but an individual or a company with genuine knowledge of the construction industry has checked their CV, checked their aptitude and checked their skills and found them to be worthy of employment and a weekly or a monthly wage packet. Now, not only are the skills of the worker being called into question, but the judgment of their employer is under scrutiny too. Apparently, running a business for years or even decades and employing dozens or even hundreds of people doesn't make you fit to judge the skills of a person in your employment. But a bit of plastic does. Now, just to let you know, as it's Tuesday, I'm going to be live over on Instagram at 2:30 this afternoon for our regular Talk Tuesday show. I can't be sure, but I won't be at all surprised if the subject of grandfather rights made an appearance on that show as well. If you're not busy at 2:30, please hop on over to Instagram and take part in the show. Now, that's the first rant out of the way. Time to get on with the real show. So let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I'm your host, Mark Anthony. It is Tuesday, the 31st of January. Where did January go? As that remarkably persistent guy just said, welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony. In today's show, a massive smokestack is felled in the US, Wacker Neuson prepares for Las Vegas, and Volvo duels to the finish. It'll make sense when you see it, honestly. Plus, why deadlines only matter to some. And we're going to get to all of that in just a second. But first, let's see who among the rich and the shameless will be celebrating a birthday on this day of days. And its many happy returns to Austrian composer Franz Schubert and to Henri de Grange, the founder of the Tour de France. Apparently. Happy birthday also to former heavyweight boxing champ Jersey Joe Walcott, to Baseball Hall of Famer Jackie Robinson, author Norman Mailer, and to Phil Manzanera of Roxy Music, to actress Minnie Driver, comedian Patrick Kielty, to singer and actor Justin Timberlake, and to Mumford & Sons singer Marcus Mumford. But far more importantly, today marks the birthday of one of the last British eccentrics, a man who has been angry for the best part of 50 years and who shows no sign of stopping anytime soon. The irascible Mr. John Lydon, better known to the world as the Sex Pistols frontman Johnny Rotten. Many happy returns to them, one and all. Now, before we get started, here's a quick reminder of our question of the day. Is it time to overhaul the competence card scheme? Have fun with that, people. Now, let me roll this. You've already endured one rant. You're about to endure another one. Permit me, if you will, to talk a moment about deadlines. As you can see, Douglas Adams, author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, loved him a deadline. Now, I'm sure he said that in jest, but his opinion on deadlines is apparently shared by those that hold positions of power over the demolition and construction industry. I'll come back to that in just a second, but first I'd like to figure out precisely why deadlines are a sword that cuts in only one direction, downwards. What do I mean? Well, imagine you're a demolition contractor. You've been given 24, 36 or 48 hours to demolish a bridge over a road, a motorway or a railway track. Despite the potential hazards involved in demolition, clients and safety specialists are quite comfortable to allow a process that ideally might take a week to be condensed into a night or two, just so they can get their precious road or railway line open again. A failure to hit the pre-agreed deadline can result in hefty financial penalties that run into tens or even hundreds of thousands of pounds. Now, compare and contrast that with the way in which deadlines are applied among those that purport to oversee this industry of ours. In 23 days' time, the UK demolition industry will fall silent once again, as we remember the 4 men that lost their lives during the boiler house collapse at the Didcot A power station. In 23 days' time, the resulting investigation would have been ongoing, yet unresolved, for 7 years. That's 2,555 days, give or take a leap year or two. In that time, we've had 2 monarchs, 3 US presidents, and 5 British prime ministers. Everton Football Club has had 7 managers. And in all that time, Thames Valley Police and the HSE have offered not a single jot of explanation over why 4 demolition workers left the site not on foot, but in body bags. They've provided no closure for the families to those 4 men, nor have they even attempted to explain to the watching demolition world the precise cause of the incident. And then yesterday, we had, as we had previously anticipated, the deadline for the conclusion of the Competition and Markets Authority investigation into bid rigging in the UK demolition industry shifted back again. In fact, the CMA has promised further updates multiple times. There was a next update scheduled for December 2020, another in February 2021, and in October 2021 as well. The industry held its breath again in March and July 2022, and both of those deadlines passed without resolutions. We were then told to expect an update in January 2023, but with less than 24 hours to spare, the CMA announced yet another extension that will take us through to February 2023. 7 times the CMA has shifted back the date on which it intends to share the findings of its investigation. Will they make it 8? Are they going for double figures? Will the investigation actually be wrapped up in 2023? I'm not a betting man, but even if I were, I wouldn't bet against this running into 2024. For a while, the UK demolition industry was on the edge of its seat in anticipation of the CMA's findings. Now it's slumped back in its armchair through boredom and resignation over all the broken promises. So let me just clear my throat again. I've changed tablets, so hopefully this will be a thing of the past soon. So, do these deadlines actually matter? Well, yes, I believe they do. In the case of the Didcot disaster, the families of the 4 men deserve to have had some kind of explanation by now. Furthermore, the demolition industry could potentially benefit from finding out the exact cause of the collapse to hopefully avoid a repeat in the future. In the case of the CMA investigation, clients surely deserve reassurance that they're not about to appoint a demolition contractor with a bid rigging black mark against its name. Would-be employees deserve to know more about the true nature of the company they're about to join. Now, hopefully, all of that will have made sense, and hopefully you can now see that apparently deadlines cut just one way. But just in case, here's another example. On the 14th of June 2017, a fire broke out at the 24-storey Grenfell Tower in London's North Kensington. 72 people lost their lives in that blaze. It will soon be 6 years since the post-fire investigation and the surrounding machinations began, and they're still going on. It took until this past weekend for the UK government to finally accept that it had played a role in that fire. But having done so, the Levelling Up Secretary, and on the subject of Michael Gove, why does he look like a startled ventriloquist dummy? But the Levelling Up Minister has now set a deadline of 6 weeks for the industry to sign up to a legally binding contract that would require construction companies to fix the cladding issue. So, just to be clear, the authorities can drag their heels for 7 and 6 years respectively over the deaths of those killed at Didcot and Grenfell. But if you fail to reopen a motorway within the agreed time, or if you are tardy about signing a pledge to fix some cladding, you will face immediate and hefty sanctions. Anybody else think that's just a little bit skewed? Right, while you're all mulling over my second rant in 11 minutes, how about a spot of explosive demolition?
Hi, my name is Tom Dowd. I'm the Field Operations Manager for Controlled Demolition, Inc. We just felled the chimney here at Foss Marine Terminal. We put in probably less than 50 pounds of explosives, detonated sequentially. To incline the structure to the north, she came down straight as an arrow and perfectly as planned.
You know, it's a bittersweet day. This is one of more than 10 buildings on the site that have been demolished in recent months. This is, in fact, the last one that's coming down. It's obviously the biggest one, and it's one of the biggest buildings in the city. So that will come down, and then there will be literally tens of millions of dollars spent by the private investors on clearing the site, on rebuilding the bulkhead and extending the wharfs, on building things like fueling tanks, and roadways, parking lots, so that this could become a site for both offshore wind marshalling as well as offshore wind operations and maintenance.
Fantastic job. I think you'll agree. We're going to be staying in the US right after this, but I just want to quickly pop back to the chat because our question of the day, which was, is it time to overhaul the competence card scheme? Gary Muirhead has come back and said, yes, definitely just a bunch of money-grabbing bastards who's only interested in lining their own pockets with their hard-earned money. Couldn't argue with that. And Steve Williamson, morning Steve, says, in my opinion, the whole training scheme is just a numbers game. Get as many as you can through their ticket each week. You'll get one guy that's really good and one guy that's really not up to it. Yet the experienced guy will get exactly the same card as the unexperienced guy. And told you've passed, off you go. I think more time needs to be put into operators that are not picking it up as well as others. It all gets them passed and on to the next. I've seen it, and then unfortunately the length of the message that I get to see is somewhat curtailed, so I didn't get the end of that, Steve. So if you'd like to repost the end of the message, I'd love to focus on that. Now let me get back to the show. I need to press this one. The Liebherr stand at Bauma was the biggest and the most impressive. The Bobcat stand was probably the most spectacular, but the Wacker Neuson stand was massive, impressive, and spectacular. So the company is most definitely on my must-visit list for ConExpo.
I'ma get it, you know I be on the way. Yeah. You know I be on the way. Man on a mission, I'ma get it, you know I be on the way. I'ma get it, you know I be on the way. Yeah. You know I be on the way.
Sorry, I was too busy there just reading the chat. Let's have a look. Mick Saunders says, regarding Didcot, the hope is, in my opinion, that by delaying the outcome for as long as possible, it will diffuse public opinion. As like yourself, Mark, nothing will ever change my mind that someone is pulling a sheet over our eyes. I knew 3 of these boys personally, and I still think of them and the way the families have been treated. Total disregard I have for the HSE and for the police involved. On a different subject, or a sort of different subject. Steve Williamson, I think this is the tail end of his earlier comment. I was on a course and a guy was really struggling to oldie, track out, and in general operate the machine. I thought he was on a different course, but no, same card, same pass as me. And I was just like, wow, more time instead of more numbers. Totally agree. Just going back to Wacker Neuson, looking forward to catching up with the team at Wacker Neuson. In fact, I honestly can't wait to touch down in Las Vegas. It really is going to be epic.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
And speaking of ConExpo, you will recall that the fine folks of Volvo are keeping a new product under wraps until the opening day of the show. It looks like an excavator, at least it does in the artist's impression of the stand, and there is lots of speculation that it will be a 20-ton class electric excavator. But could it be something else? Could it, for example, be a dual fuel excavator?
I'm T.S. Lim, second generation manager owner of Kim Hock Corporation Private Limited. The company was started by my father, Mr. Lim Kim Hock, sometime in 1970. We first commenced business and started operating out of my grandmother's backyard in Kampong, and today we've grown into a company with multiple factories with a total of more than 100 personnel and handling more than 200,000 tons of metals per year. Volvo CE products are known for their performance, technology and quality. We first started with Volvo CE with the excavator sometime in 2009, and they have demonstrated their after-sales support and response to our requirement. So with that, we continue the Volvo dialogue, and we are comfortable with the people. We welcome the launch of the Singapore Green Plan 2030 recently, as we seek new solutions to power our needs in a greener way. Volvo CE has a long history of innovations and technologies. That's why we approached Volvo for an electric excavator to meet our requirement for mobility, improving efficiencies, and reducing carbon footprint.
At Volvo CE, we help our customers raise their productivity by developing specialized solutions to meet their needs. The EC480EL dual source power material handler was developed by Volvo CE Special Application Solution Team and is a approved vendor in South Korea, and is one of a kind in this part of the world. It features a dual source power, which consists of an electric motor and a Stage 5 certified diesel engine.
Volvo CE presented the electric excavator solutions after many rounds of discussion. They even invited me to electric excavator job site in South Korea, where I get to see firsthand the machine at work and speak to the owner of these machines, and that further strengthened my decision on the purchase of these machines. We have two Volvo electric excavators. The first unit is mounted with the orange peel grapper for material handling, and the second unit is mounted with a hydraulic shear for cutting oversized steel scrap.
A ground pole was erected to channel electricity to power the excavator. This is a much cleaner option, in line with Kim Hock's green efforts. The entire installation was done swiftly together with Kim Hock on site. This dual power solution practically eliminates downtime.
Climate change. We've seen firsthand how the global weather has been changing. In fact, I recall when I started work 30 years ago, it's not as hot. But now it's getting really warm, and we see heavier rainstorm, even flooding in a very efficient infrastructure drainage system in Singapore. Kim Hock, being a forward-looking company, would like to do its part in the green initiative to mitigate the adverse effect of climate change. We already have a few electric machines in our factories. By adding another two Volvo EC480 electric excavators in our factory, further strengthen our commitment to be a low carbon footprint company.
Volvo Construction Equipment is always at the forefront when it comes to innovation and environmental care. We are glad to realize these shared values with Kim Hock.
We Chinese believe in providing the basic needs of 衣食住行. And at Kim Hock, we believe the only way to sustain this is to go green.
Got to say, my money is still on an electric machine, but I'd love to get a closer look at that. Now, just on the subject of all things ConExpo, Steve Williamson has just advised 38 days and 5 hours till check-in. Are you counting, Steve? Yeah, me too. Steve Williamson also says, I got a hint from a Volvo lad on what the secret machine is, but I'm not sure if it's true. My money is on a 20-ton class electric excavator because I know there's one out there. We shall see. Question of the day. Cars and MVQ, just a money-making racket. Again, thank the Lord. Mick almost said, thank the Lord I'm out of it all. Jim Turner says, question of the day, should the card scheme be overhauled? Definitely, and it should be like a vehicle driving license. Government-run examiners should test people. Sorry, I was trying to work out what that was. Should test people, and the category is held for life. But everyone has a machine hours log that gets uploaded onto a database with machines, type, size, and serial number, so future employers can see how much experience someone has before they employ them. Perfectly doable. Bearing in mind we have a smart card scheme in place that carries all of those additional and upgraded skills. All of that is perfectly doable. All we lack is the will. Now, that pretty much wraps up the main part of this morning's show. But before I go, for a quick reminder that I'm going to be live on Instagram at 2:30 this afternoon. Join me if you can. Let's have a natter over there. But before I go, if you fancy a laugh, do yourself a favour. Go over to Google and type in South Yorkshire Police Operations Complex, and then take a look at the first line of the address. That is South Yorkshire Police Operations Complex. Take a look at the first line of the address. It is a work of quiet and subtle genius. Trust me, actually made me laugh out loud. Not a lol, but an actual laugh out loud. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into the chat to see what you're all saying today. If you can't stick around for that, then please stay safe. Hopefully see you over on Instagram, but look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Have a great day, and thanks for watching. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I'll see you on the other side of this for what we now know as the Craic. I completely forgot the music yesterday, so I'm getting it in nice and early today. Good morning, everyone. How on earth are we all doing? Thank you very much indeed for being here. Feeling a lot better today. Stomach was dead squiffy yesterday, but feeling a lot better today. And just want to say a very quick thank you to Gary Muirhead. I was at the hospital yesterday, didn't get any results because it was blood tests and chest x-rays, but they let me leave, so that's always a good sign. When you get to my age, if they let you leave a hospital, you're doing okay. So we'll be getting the results back. Hopefully the switch up. I'm 3 days into the new blood pressure tablets. Hopefully the cough will start to subside now. Let's hope so. Right, let's go back to the very, very outset of the chat. First off the mark was Gary Muirhead. Good morning, Gary. Thank you very much indeed for being here. And thank you for your message this morning. Much appreciated. I'm glad I was in your thoughts. Mick Simmons is here as well. Morning, Mick. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I know you don't need to, as a retired gentleman of leisure, but it's always good to see you in the chat. So thank you very much indeed for being here, Mr. Drew, another of my travel partners to Sin City in March. Was it 38 days and 5 hours time? I'm not sure what flight Nick is on. But I'll certainly be seeing him while I'm out there. Looking forward to spending some time with the Digger Man blog hero himself. Steve Williamson, morning all on this really wet and windy day. Glad I'm an operator. Yeah, there are times, aren't there? Funnily enough, maybe this is just peculiar to me. One of the great pleasures in life, I like to fish, and I would consider myself a warm weather fisherman. I like fishing generally around about July and August time. That's my preferred option. But there is something about being sat under a fishing umbrella when it's absolutely tipping down and you're dry as a bone. You're sat there with your cheese and pickle sandwich, your flask of coffee, whether or not the fish are biting, but you're tucked away under a fishing umbrella. Kind of like that. Our friend Mr. Brock, Jeff Kenyon, is here as well. Morning, Jeff. Are you going to Vegas, Jeff? If so, love to see you over there. Mark Whiting is here as well. Morning, Mark. I need to have a look at my stream deck. I've got a button set up to say good morning to our regular viewers. I have one for Mark. I pressed it about 15 times this morning and the damn thing didn't work. No idea what it's all about. One that did work though was Ken's. Morning, Ken. It looks like he's got the same rain probably that Steve Williamson has got, even though they are some distance apart. Jim Turner's here as well. Morning, Jim. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Steve Williamson has asked a question. How often do you do a show on Instagram? Had you asked me that 3 weeks ago, I'd have said hardly ever. I used to do a weekly show. I used to do a show every single Wednesday at 12 noon. But 12 noon, when this show ends, there's still a bit of, what is the technical term, fannying about that I have to do, making sure that thumbnails are where they need to be, that it's uploaded in the various places it needs to be. I then go in and edit some bits and pieces and produce those as additional videos as well. So getting this done and dusted, finishing at 11 and being ready to go live at 12 just proved so problematic that I let it slide, which is a ridiculous thing to do, bearing in mind that our biggest audience actually lives over on Instagram. We've got 150,000 plus followers over there. So part of my New Year's resolution, and I'm soon to be 4 weeks in and I'm still sticking to it, I have committed to doing every Tuesday, but I'm doing it at 2:30. 2:30, A, to give me a bit more time to get all of this done, but B, it also means that a lot of our American friends are then online as well. So we are getting a good audience of those. Just on the subject of this show, up until probably November last year, we used to broadcast this show purely to Facebook and to LinkedIn. Facebook pages of Demolition News and Diggers and Dozers, and also my personal LinkedIn channel. But I upgraded the whole kit and caboodle, as I say, around about November last year, and we're now broadcasting live on Twitter. Good morning, Twitter, and over on YouTube. And YouTube has been the biggest difference, and I guess it's because of the nature of a live stream. We would take the recorded version up until November last year and upload it to YouTube, and we were getting 30, 40, 50, 60 views of that show. We're now getting 200 live, and then they keep going up afterwards. So obviously, I think I can read from that, people actually like the live element, and now that it's over on YouTube, which is, for some people, it's a lot more accessible anyway. Some people don't like LinkedIn, some people have a real objection to Facebook. So the very fact that we're over on YouTube is a big benefit. The other big benefit, of course, I can actually embed the video from YouTube straight onto Demolition News. So if anybody is watching or is looking at Demolition News now, this is playing live on demolitionnews.com. It used to be a recording, it's now going out live. So just go back to your question, Steve. Once a week, every Tuesday, 2:30 in the afternoon. Catch us if you can. Gary Muirhead, question of the day. Yes, definitely, just a bunch of money grabbing bastards, only interested in lining their own pockets with their hard earned money. And as I say, I mean, the more I think about this subject, the more problem I have with it. Like, and I mentioned this in the show itself. You know, if you run a demolition company or a groundworks company, and you have senior managers, middle managers, I would like to think that you can wheedle out the wheat from the chaff. You will, you might employ somebody, but it turns out they're not as good as you might have liked, and therefore you let them go. So you end up with a team of people that you trust, that you can rely upon, and whose skills you have vetted for yourself, and you find them acceptable. And now somebody is coming along saying, well, we don't just trust your judgment, even though you know the industry way better than we do. We don't trust your judgment. We would like to vet those individuals ourselves at a cost to both you and quite possibly to the employee as well. Yeah. Dan Collins in the house. Morning, Dan. Hope you're all well. Yeah, I'm feeling chipper, mighty chipper today. Don't let my ranting fool you. I'm in a good mood today. I rant when I'm in a good mood. You can understand why my wife wants to spend a lot of time out of the house, can't you? We've covered this one, but the whole training scheme is just a numbers game. I want to pick up on a point that Steve has made there. So some of these training courses, let's say there's a a 14-ton excavator course going on. And the training providers, whoever it might be, NPAWS, CPC, ESCS, CCPS, one of those with a bunch of initials. In order to make those courses economically viable, they generally prefer to train 10 or 12 people at once. As I said yesterday, I think even I, who I can operate a keyboard, not much else, but even I can take a look at an operator and think he's good, and I can look at another operator and think he's not. So imagine you are, as Steve alluded to in his point there, imagine you are on a course with 10 or 12 men and women, and at the end of the course, all 12 or all 10 of you pass, and you know full well that you're happy with your skill set. You've been doing it for a while and you're happy with your skill set. Bob to your left, really good operator. Jenny to your right, really good operator. But Frank over in the corner there, you wouldn't trust him to walk your dog. So he now has precisely the same piece of plastic that you do. And apparently that makes him the same as you. That marks him as competent, exactly the same as it marks you as competent. Is that right? Well, I don't think so. Let's have a look. How mixed numbers? Yeah, we will be doing something to mark the 7th anniversary of the Didcot disaster, and I've got to be honest. And hopefully this speaks more to the time that's elapsed since that collapse happened. I hope it speaks more to that than it does about my lack of creativity. But I've run out of ideas. Genuinely, I've run out of ideas. We've broadcast from the site of Didcot, which is much changed now. There's not even anything left to see now. We've done standalone videos to mark the anniversary. We've done rants. We've done, open sessions where we've invited people along to speak about it and everything else. 7 years, and I'm literally out of ideas. I don't know whether to just pitch up on the 23rd of February, press the go live button, and then just sit in silence. I don't know. If anyone has got any ideas on what you think might be an appropriate way to mark that 7th anniversary, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Steve Williamson. Yeah, there we go. I was on a course that a guy was really struggling to operate a machine. I thought he was on a different course, but no, same card, same pass as me. I was just like, wow. More time instead of more numbers. Yeah, and I think that's a really valid point that Steve makes there at the end. More time. I'm not suggesting for one moment that somebody that is there. Back when I was at school, we had A's, A plus, which was the creme de la creme. D was a fail, and then you had the bits in between. I have no major issue with somebody getting a C plus and being handed a piece of plastic. But A, it should be a different piece of plastic, and B, it should then trigger another scheme that means that he is mentored or he goes for some additional, whatever it might be. Not give him the same card and therefore the same rights and earning potential and the same competence, agreed competence level as somebody that is really good. That makes no sense at all. Is it 38 days and 4.5 hours now? I think it may well be. Yeah, just a money-making racket. It really is, and particularly when you look at the multi-tiered system that we have in place. So obviously you've got government at the top, but you've then got Construction Leadership Council and the CITB, both of whom have a degree of connection with the government. We have Build UK, who also have a degree of so CLC and CITB insist upon this stuff. Build UK demands these cards to ensure that competent people are on the sites of their members. So you've got government, CLC, CITB, Build UK. You've then got NPAWS, CPCS, CSCS, NDTG, Uncle Tom Cobley and all. And just on that subject, one of the points that came up yesterday when I was talking about this over on LinkedIn was I tend to be very focused on all things demolition and diggers. But all of this applies equally to people that are involved in plastering and fit-out work, painters, decorators, electrical contractors, heating and ventilating contractors. It covers the whole gamut of the construction industry. So going back to before I went off at a tangent, government, CLC, CITB, Build UK, NPAWS, CSCS, CPCS, NDTG, and then, because a lot of those operate in this way, a lot of them will then farm out the actual delivery of the required training to training companies. So how many tiers is that? 5, 6? And every one of those 5 or 6 is taking a little cut. I don't know the current figures, and I'm not going to name the training organisation involved, but I was told a while back that it costs something like, I think I was told it was 70p to produce the piece of plastic that says you are a competent person for this training organisation. And how much are they charging for that card? Not the course, not the certificate, the card. How much are they charging for the 70p card? 18 quid. 18 quid. That's quite the markup, isn't it? Yeah. We're talking all things Conexpo again. As I say, having spoken to a lot of the fine folks at Volvo, I am aware of the fact that there is a 20-ton electric excavator in circulation. Last I heard, it was up in Scandinavia, but maybe it's not unique, and maybe, just maybe, that is the machine we're going to see on the stand. But looking forward to seeing it, whatever the hell it proves to be. I'm going to say this again. Jim Turner, I've already read this out, but I think Jim makes a very valid point. Question of the day. Definitely it should be like a vehicle driving license. Government-run examiners should test people, and the category is held for life. For life. Because, as we all know, information and experience is accumulated. It doesn't diminish. Unless you have a major blow to the head, you suffer from... what's the word? Dementia. Chances are, if you operated a machine for about 30 odd years, all of the knowledge, every little trick of the trade is up there in the dark recesses of your cranium. It doesn't fall out. Cards for life. Yes, please. But everyone has a machine hours log that gets uploaded onto a database of machine type, size, serial number, so future employers can see how much experience someone has before they employ them. Not difficult, but impossible, because, as I say, there are 4, 5, 6, 7 tiers of people all taking a cut of the current system. It's this is nothing whatsoever to do with the card scheme, but it does apply. I heard a phrase recently: if a system is broken and has been broken for a number of years, the chances are someone wants it to remain that way. Steve Williamson, I got added to my card the tilt rotator, use of pallet foot, grading bar. But is it required? I've never had anyone ask for a ticket for the tilt rotator. But the time will come. The time will come. Because there is money to be made. All it takes is for one of the major tier 1 contractors to say, we have recognised the increasingly widespread use of tilt rotators within the UK construction industry, and we therefore expect any operators operating such a complex piece of equipment to hold a relevant card to prove that they are competent at the controls of that. And then all the training organisations, whoever they are, and I'm talking about the organisers of the training, CITB, CPCS, CSCS, NPAWS, Knockham, Uncle Tom Cobley and all, they'll rub their hands together. The training providers, that's tier down, will rub their hands together. And trust me, you will be asked, same as you will be asked for different attachments, you will be asked for GPS. Trust me, it's coming, because there is money to be made at every single level of this. Mick Saunders, I wish I could meet someone who has the heart for demolition. I would get hold of Mr. Spock and do a mind meld to pass on what I've learned over 50 odd years in demo, and walk away hoping I've helped someone enjoy the game as much as I did. Yeah. For those of you that don't know, I know exactly what he's talking about with a mind meld. That was a big thing back in the day, the mind meld. But again, let me ask you this. I don't know how many weeks of assessment it takes to achieve your NVQ certification. But two things. First of all, it is an assessment. It's not instruction, it's an assessment. So somebody who has not done your job is going to assess how you do your job. So that's one side. That's one way of hopefully making people better at their jobs in this industry. The other alternative is to stick an operator or a site manager or whoever it might be with someone like Mick, and Mick spends a week showing them the ropes. Who do you think, out of those two people, mating with MVQ or mating that spent a week with Mick, who do you think is likely to be more knowledgeable at the end of it? My money's on the person mentored by Mick or one of his cohorts in the industry. Bloody hell, sorry, not able to say a lot working with Complete. Those are clowns. Had to look twice. No bloody initiative on how to think things through, which is cheesing me off. Dan, do me a favour. Holler out the window of your machine and see what cards they hold. Chances are they're the same as yours. Just saying. And then operating a Hyundai that's definitely the worst machine for power and hydraulic. Diabolical, it's not helping matters. I don't know how people can rate these newer range Hyundais. Anybody got any points on that? I'm just going to say a very quick good morning. Noob Gamer from YouTube. We do seem to attract quite a few gamers, but thank you very much indeed for joining us. As you're here for the first time, you get some welcome confetti. Thank you for joining us. No idea why you're here. This is a bit of a niche channel and a bit of a niche subject, but I appreciate your presence regardless. Dan Cullen says, question of the day, yes, money grabbing individuals, I should say, and it shows you that they treat us as a number, not a person or a valued member. It's unreal. They rate money over health and well-being of their staff. Yes, they do that. Dan goes on to say, I know operators that say have so-called 5 years plus experience and they don't have the initiative or a clue of what they're doing on an excavator. Yes, they can pull the levers, but they can't use their head. It's unreal. It infuriates me seeing them get the same, if not more, than us who actually know and use our heads. If you listen to, and I don't think he's in the chat today, but if you listen to Nigel Williams from the Seat of the Cab podcast, now bear in mind Nigel is an operator of some standing. I've been doing it for a while. And the frustration that he has is that he refers to some of these operators as warm bodies. Just get somebody from an agency to go and drive that dump truck. And you'd think on the face of it that driving a dump truck was getting it loaded in one place, dumping in another place, and hopefully driving it between the two without injuring or killing anyone. But a dump truck is deceptively complex. And one of the key things that really is a key link in the chain of that operation is positioning. So positioning themselves to be loaded quickly and efficiently by the guy that's sat in the excavator or the wheel loader that is loading him. If it's done right, all the machines on that site are more productive. You get more production, you get more material removed, the whole thing runs smoothly. If you position it wrong, not only are you likely to incur the wrath of Nigel Williams in the excavator or somebody of his ilk, but you're going to slow the whole thing down. You are a weak link in a chain. As an industry, we know those weak links. We can spot them a mile off. And that doesn't matter whether they're on a dump truck, a dozer, an excavator, a skid steer, a mini excavator, a grader, a scraper. Doesn't matter. We can spot them a mile off. But now we have somebody quite possibly in their 20s who has gained all their NVQ assessment experience in a classroom. He's now going to stand there with a clipboard and say, "They're fine by me," or You have failed your assessment. Tosh, I tell you. Dan Cullen, I agree with Jim Turner. I'm not entirely sure what bit of Jim Turner you're agreeing with, but I find myself increasingly agreeing with Jim Turner. Chris Baker is one guy that puts actual thought into testing his attendees on courses even after support. I don't know who. Oh, that's your mate, Chris Baker, isn't it? Yeah, I have spoken to him. Tilt rotator is a newish concept, and what bloody trainer has or assessor spent time on them? Well, apparently that doesn't matter. As the internet meme always says, I don't know your job, but I'm going to tell you how to do it. Just as a small aside, and I am planning to speak to this guy probably on Thursday, I had a very long, a very detailed response to my grandfather rant from a guy that actually runs a training company. I don't know them, but he as I said, really, I mean, it's page, I don't know, probably 1,000 words in response to what I'd said. He agreed with some of it. He disagreed vehemently with other bits of it. But one point that he did say was, I don't know anything about journalism. Trust me, neither do I. But I don't know anything about journalism. But I'm pretty sure that over the years you will have had to have sat different courses to prove your ability to do your job. No. I left school, I left college, I started at a publishing company. The publishing company paid for me to go on a journalist training course when I was 21, and 36 years later, nobody has ever asked me to prove that I can do what I do. They didn't ask me when I was writing for magazines, and when I switched from predominantly writing to predominantly video, no one asked me to go and sit a broadcasting NVQ either, because my words, my deeds and my actions speak for themselves. Why? And I realise my occupation is not potentially life-threatening. Why is my job any different? And as Jim Turner rightly said about a driving licence, you can kill quite a few people if you drive badly. Even if you pass your driving test, if you drive badly, you could kill multiple people. And yet you can pass your driving test at 18 and hold that licence for 50, 60 years before anybody says we might need to check you over again. And think about this. This is a point that my son Fred made last night, and I got all defensive, but having thought about it, as is often the case, he was right, I was wrong. Think about how cars have changed over the years. How much faster they've got. How the shape of them has changed. They used to be made out of girders. Now they're made out of plastic and stuff. Imagine how differently you have to drive that. Now my father, God bless him, was a chauffeur for 30 odd years, and he drove Mercedes and Rolls Royces and Bentleys and all that. What would my dad, and my dad is by far the best driver I have ever sat beside. He did it for a living. He'd done the advanced driving test. He'd done defensive driving, and the whole police thing as well, and all of that. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant driver. He drove a manual car like I drive a manual. The gear changes, you never were aware that he changed gear. A brilliant driver. But what would he make of a Tesla? 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. Silently. What would he make of that? And yet, despite all those technological advances, despite the fact that those cars are much, much faster, and as we've already said about the car parks, they're much, much heavier, my dad was never required to go and prove that he could drive a car. Jim Turner says, also if the cars were the same as driving licence, the police would be able to come on site and drink drug test operators. Then there would be a legally binding point system and fines. Jim Turner for Construction Minister. He has my vote. Yeah. And think that through. We have a situation here where somewhere between 60 and 70,000, 60 or 70,000 people are going to be assessed to prove that they can do the thing that they are currently already doing. At the same time, we all know full well that there are people on our demolition and construction sites up and down the country who are working impaired by the presence of drugs and alcohol. And what are the powers that be doing about it? And do you know why? No money in it. No money in it. If anything, it would be a cost. Because if you actually instigated a system whereby people were tested randomly for the presence of drink and drugs, you would find some, they would be sent home from work would stop, construction would presumably become less efficient, although I'd like to think it would be more efficient without somebody that's off their tits on whatever drug they've taken that day. So we can do something about something. We can fix a problem that doesn't need fixing, but a problem that does need fixing, we're not going to address it because there's no money in it. Oh yes, they would do a course on tilt rotators, no question about it. Absolutely right. Exactly the same as me, and by watching them it's a joke. Even some of the operators with so-called X years experience don't know how to use it correctly, sprockets to rear and or daily checks. I asked this question earlier this week. Late last week? I can't remember, one of those. But that was, I actually asked it of Nigel Williams. If you're working on a site and let's say you've got a dozen guys working around you on various machines or whatever, how long would it take you to spot somebody that's not a good operator? And I reckon it would take me about 5 minutes. Nigel Williams said somebody wouldn't even need to get on the machine. Just the way or the fact that they do their daily checks or not would be clue enough. Mick Saunders, have a good day, Mark. I'm getting the evil eye off the Hound. Bruce will catch you Paul tomorrow. Yeah, look forward to it, Mick, and give my regards to the Hound. Dan Cullen says, I mentioned this to a site agent this morning, letting off steam. They mark check sheets and not actually check the machine for faults. Yeah, and we have the technology here. There are, I think, among the major equipment manufacturers rather, but there's also some independents. There are apps out there that you can load onto your phone, so you can prove that you've performed your daily checks. If, for example, and I'm just going to throw this one out at random, let's say a machine suddenly stops because oil filter's clogged or air filter's clogged, you get a warning and there's a problem with the filter. Let's just say, use that as an example. The dealer is called out to come and fix the problem to get the machine up and running again. And when they look at that filter, they find that actually looks like this hasn't been checked for a while. Let me have a look at that app of yours. And there you are, having ticked. It was ticked 6 months on the trot that you checked that filter. and yet bizarrely it's now clogged to the hill. No change on the site, but it's now clogged to the very rafters. There's another indicator that the operator is not doing what they're... That's surely better than... we're there doing dog speak. Mick Wright has just said good morning to the hound as well. Yep, surely all of that is better than assessment by somebody fresh out of school or college. Anyway, I don't want to use up all that I have to say about this because I'm going to be live over on Instagram at 2:30 this afternoon. I'm also going to be back here tomorrow. What we'll be talking about tomorrow, heaven knows. Will we still be banging this drum? Possibly. But yes, we'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. if you can't make it over onto Instagram today. But if you do, be sure to say hello in the chat and I'll give you a shout out. I can generally spot who goes through, but we have 500, 600, sometimes 700 people go through the mill on Instagram, and it can be difficult to see who they all are. So if you are over on Instagram at 2:30 this afternoon, please let me know that you're there, and I'll be sure to give you a wave. Until then, people, go and have a good day. Be on the lookout for men carrying clipboards. They do not have your best interests at heart. Till tomorrow. All the very best. Have a good one.